When you're adding or subtracting radicals, no matter what the index is, you have to have the same index and the same radicand in order for them to be like radicals. So the square root of 2 and the square root of 3, we can't add those together. Okay, so it's not going to equal the square root of 5. You don't add them. It would just stay square root of 2 plus square root of 3. Square root of 5 and square root of 10, again, stays the same because our indexes, even though they're the same, our radicands are different, the number under the radical. Square root of 27 we can rewrite as 3 radical 3. Square root of 54 we can rewrite as 3 radical 6. You have to break them down if they can be broken down. So we broke them down. Our radicals are not the same. They're unlike since my radicands are different. So my answer then would be this one, the one that's simplified. Square root of x and square root of x, they have the same index and the same radicand, so you add the coefficients. So it would be 2 radical x. Okay, so radical 2 plus 3 radical 2 is going to equal 4 radical 2. 2 radical 3 and 5 radical 3 is 7 radical 3. Square root of 27 breaks down into 3 radical 3. And then we have plus radical 3. So we'll get 4 radical 3. So, a little note on the side. You have to have the same index and the same radicand. Can't be one or the other. It has to be both. Okay? So, that's like what we talked about has to be the same. So if we look at some examples, 5 radical 3 plus radical 12. Right now they're unlike because radical 3 and radical 12 are not the same. We can break down radical 12 to be 2 radical 3. Once we break it down, we compare. They're the same radicands and the same indexes, so we have 7 radical 3. 3 radical 5x minus 2 radical 5x. They're the same radicands, so we're just going to combine our coefficients. So 3 minus 2 is 1, radical 5x. Okay, now on this one we have the same indexes. They're all 3s, but they're different radicands. So we want to see if we can break them down. So 250, if we break 250 down, we have 25 and 10, 5 and 5, 5 and 2. Because it's a cube root, we're looking for groups of 3 of the same number. So we have 3 5s. So this is going to be 5 cubed root of 2. 54, we're going to break down. So 9 and 6, 3 and 3, 3 and 2. Again, we're looking for 3 of the same number. So there's 3 on the outside, cubed root of 2 on the inside. And then 16, do that over here. We have 4 and 4, 2 and 2, 2 and 2. Again, 3 of the same number, so there's 3 2s, 1 left over. So now we have the same indexes and the same radicands. So we're going to combine the 5, the 3, and the negative 2 together. So we get 6, and then cubed root of 2. Okay, so if we look at more of these, again, same radicand, so we're good. We're going to add 3x and 4x, so 7x, and then we have xy on the inside. Radicands stay the same. Okay, they're the same, so 17 minus 15 is going to give us 2, 5th root of 3x squared. And this last one, they're not the same. They have the same indexes. They're all 2s, but not the same radicands. So square root of 12 is going to be 2 radical 3. Square root of 75 is going to be 5 radical 3 minus radical 3. Okay, you have to break it down first before you start adding and subtracting things. So we're going to add the 2, the 5, and the negative 1. So 6 radical 3. When you're multiplying, you're going to FOIL like you normally would. So for foiling this, 4 times 5 is going to give us 20. 4 times 4 radical 2. You're just multiplying the coefficients. So 4 times 4 is 16. Keep the radical 2. 2 radical 2 times 5. So the coefficients, 2 and 5, get multiplied. You get 10 radical 2. When you multiply 2 radical 2 and 4 radical 2, you're going to multiply the coefficients together to get 8, and you're also multiplying the radicals together. Radical 2 times radical 2 is going to be radical 4, which is 2. The shortcut is it's the same number as the radicand. So square root of 500 and square root of 500, if you multiply them, would be 500. So we're just going to have 8 times 2. So now we're just going to combine our like terms. So we have a 20, and now this is a 16. So that's going to give me 36. And then I have 16 radical 2 and 10 radical 2. So 26 radical 2. Okay, same thing for the next one. 3 times 5 gives me 15. 3 times radical 7 is 3 radical 7. Negative radical 7 times 5 is negative 5 radical 7. Negative radical 7 times radical 7. So I'm multiplying the coefficients. So negative 1 times 1 is negative 1 times 7. So I have 15 minus 7 now. That's going to give me 8. And then I have 3 minus 5, so negative 2 radical 7. Okay, so for the last one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply 3 times 2, so we get 6. 3 times 4 radical 5, so we're multiplying the coefficients. 3 times 4 is going to give me 12 radical 5. 2 radical 5 times 2, so again multiply the coefficients. 4 radical 5. And then 2 radical 5 times 4 radical 5. So 2 times 4 we're going to multiply to get 8. Radical 5 and radical 5 gives us 5. So now we have 6 and 40. So we're going to get 46. And then 12 radical 5 and 4 radical 5 is going to give us 16 radical 5. Alright, so last piece is dividing. So we want to get rid of any radicals in our denominator. So we have to multiply by the conjugate. So for the first one, we have 5 minus radical 2. We want to get rid of that radical sign. So we have to multiply by 5 plus radical 2 over 5 plus radical 2. It's always going to be the opposite sign of what's in the middle. So you're not going to change the sign on the 5. You're only going to change the sign of what's in the middle. And then we're going to distribute. So 3 radical 2 times 5 gives me 15 radical 2. 3 radical 2 times radical 2, that's going to give me 3 times 2. Now on the bottom, when we FOIL this out, 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times radical 2 is 5 radical 2. Negative radical 2 times 5 is negative 5 radical 2. Negative radical 2 and radical 2 is going to be a negative 1 times 2. Now remember when we did this with, in the quadratics chapter, also with complex numbers, when you multiply by the conjugate of something, it's going to cancel out that middle term. So the 5 radical 2 and the negative 5 radical 2 are gone. Now on the top, we have 3 times 2, so we have 6, and the number goes first, so 6 first, and then the 15 radical 2. In the bottom, we have 25 and negative 2, so that's going to give me 23 in the bottom. Okay, and then in the second one, we're going to, again, multiply by the conjugate, so radical 3 plus radical 5 over radical 3 plus radical 5. So we're going to distribute 2 radical 7 times radical 3. So we have 2 radical 21. 2 radical 7 times 5. Radical 35. In the bottom, radical 3 and radical 3 is 3. Radical 3 is 5. Radical 5 is radical 15. Negative radical 5 and radical 3 is negative radical 15. Negative radical 5 and radical 5 is negative 5. So again, these cancel out on the bottom. we can't add the top because 21 and 35 are not the same. So we're just going to leave that as 2 radical 21 plus 2 radical 35. And in the bottom, we have 3 and negative 5, which is negative 2. And now we can divide everything by a negative sign. So we have negative 1 radical 21 minus radical 35. So that would be our final simplified answer. And then for the last one, okay, we're going to multiply by 3 minus radical 6. 3 minus radical 6. So 4x times 3 is going to give 12x. 4x times negative radical 6 is negative 4x radical 6. On the bottom, 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times negative radical 6 is negative 4 radical 6. Radical 6 times 3 is positive 3 radical 6. Radical 6 times negative radical 6 is minus 6. Again, these will cancel. The top can't add together since the 12x doesn't have a radical 6 with it. So we're going to keep it as 12x minus 4x radical 6. On the bottom, we have 9 minus 6. So that's going to give us 3.